Hello, this is Alan Folmsby here to present some theoretical physics for you today. This is live on November 20th, 10 a.m., and I'll be back every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at this time, 20 hours GMT. So today's subject, as you see here, is ab initio, and this is the basic principles of physics, the first principles. Standard science has a lot of things they can say, but it always is attempted to be based on ab initio ideas. So I'm going to give you a little talk here at the beginning. So here I am in my Maui Theoretical Physics Laboratories, and this ab initio first principles of science is being updated as the generator project is very important, that the world needs a new source of electricity that's clean, and scientists have already tried many ideas. We need some new ab initio ideas, and I'm offering them as proposed theoretical physics. Now I'm going to turn the camera around to show you some of the standard science things, and it's not copyrighted, except I'm producing everything myself here, and I'm not going to show you other people's ab initio documents. So I'll just turn the camera around for you here. All right, you can see one of the screens over here, and I'm going to be talking about standard science first. Of course, the conservation of energy is one of the ab initio first principles. And then sometimes people will say Schrodinger's equation is the starting point. It's some kind of a solid foundation upon which all other atomic science could be based as a proposed theory. And they claim it works out very well, using Schrodinger's equation as the first principle of atoms, molecules, and even nuclei. Now, along with the conservation of energy, of course, is the Hamiltonian. In your physics books, you'll see the H is calculated, and it's really a lumped functional model. And to go beyond the energy lump is difficult. I'm going up against standard ideas such as the photon has energy. Under a lumped functional model, yes, the photon has some energy related to it somehow. And that other basic ideas, ab initio, have been the virial theorem, which I've read about in physics books, where the potential energy is equal to twice the kinetic energy under some situations. Now, also Planck's constant is considered to be some basic units of a minimum amount of energy times time, or momentum times distance. And really that's h bar is angular momentum. Another founding principle of standard science is the square root of -1 is invoked when something is not possible using real numbers. They make up imaginary ones, and the square root of -1 is, say, I, is used in a lot of equations, but it's a sterile concept. If you try to get to the foundation of all reality to make a new generator, you'll find that square root of -1 is sterile. Now, potential energy is used often to balance the conservation of energy. And really, a definition of potential energy for me is it's just a calculated energy so that everything is conserved. Now, some of the basic things for ab initio thinking is the kilogram. Standard science claims you cannot get to any kind of a smaller thing than a kilogram. And what I'm going to be telling you about today under ab initio concepts is a new foundation for physics at the lowest level, with finer details than energy can provide. My name is Alan Folmsby. I have a Master of Science degree in electrical engineering, and I've promoted myself to be a theoretical physicist. Now, you could also go and read up on all my notebooks that I have, and I have about 12 notebooks at my website, which I'll be showing a little later on at impuremath.wordpress.com. Now, getting to the end of the other slide, which is for standard science, we see that mass has been deified. I call it the apotheosis of mass, where it's given powers and profound influences it does not deserve. People say that mass is energy, that a missing mass is because of a missing energy. And a lot of times mass of a tiny particle is expressed in electron volts, as if it's rude to say joules, and that it's somehow primitive to talk about mass being kilograms instead of electron volts or some amazing properties of mass. No, I'll tell you later my ideas on that. Now, in standard science, time is vaguely mentioned occasionally. Nobody knows where it comes from, where it goes, or very much about it, but it's used millions of times in physics books. So I'm going to change that in a minute. So also, the very ab initio concept here is G, from Isaac Newton. He had this idea of the universal gravitational constant, big G, and that is still used in relativity. Now, another ab initio thing is quarks. In standard science, that is the foundation of matter. I claim it's a wrong idea, and it is non-initio. Now, moving along on the new science, and that I'm laying a foundation at the lowest level, the smallest things, and affect the future of science and our ability to make clean electricity. Now, the finer details will be including the basic insight at the beginning. That theory I came up with is that gravity has space going into baryons, and time grows out of baryons in an equal amount. So this is partially using the work of another scientist, Dr. Joy Christian, who said that time grows. So you can see that phrase occurs in this theory. And I added the space is shrinking into protons and neutrons. And that makes the conservation of continuum. So there's an equal amount of time coming out of protons. For example, if we make a time constant tau and put an equation relating the volume of protons, we can find the 5 nanosecond time constant relative to the proton volume V, where in this formula here, N is the number of baryons in the Earth, for example. V is the proton volume. And every 5 nanoseconds, the proton consumes its own volume out of the surrounding space. Now, that amount of space flowing into matter is equal to ZA over 1 second, where ZA is the fallen shell volume. Now, Z is the height fallen in 1 second, and A is the area of the Earth. So this equation is true for any planet or star if you put tau is about 5 nanoseconds using a proton radius of 0.95 femtometers. So in this conservation of continuum theory I just showed you here, I'm able to calculate the factors of Newton's big G. And now this becomes the ab initio calculation in which the big G is still used nowadays in relativity. The general theory of relativity uses the big G. Now here's what's inside of it. It's the volume of a proton per proton mass m per tau seconds. So G equals V over 3m tau seconds. M is the proton mass, tau is 5 nanoseconds, and the second comes from the experiment where you drop a rock for 1 second. So another kind of ab initio thing for standard science was Planck's h bar, Planck's constant. And I claim that gravity is what is powering that angular momentum. And here's the calculation for h, the Planck's constant. Now given that p is the momentum of free space, the volume of a proton v over 5 nanoseconds, then Planck's constant h is equal to 4 pi times p times a distance, the Bohr radius a. And then the other constants are just dimensionless ratios. Km over GQ is the Coulomb constant, the proton mass, proton charge, and the big G, of course, is Newton's big universal constant G for gravitation. So the replenishment power is going to be discussed very soon. But I want to turn the camera over to something else in a second here. And I'm just going to take a little time to aim it up and focus it so you can just read up a little bit here. Okay, I've got the camera zoomed in on my notebook, and so here is one of my notebooks, and this is illustrating the mass equals area theory, and that space is a liquid in this treatment, and the proton is a circle in the top, and electron would be a dot near the bottom, and under influence of a gravitational field, the liquid is flowing past, but also being consumed by the proton and not consumed by the electron. So that in the future science which I propose, space is treated as a liquid and mass is an area of the continuum liquid. All right, thank you for standing by. Here's some more pictures of protons and electrons. So at the top, say, is a picture of the isosurfaces around a proton in which the space is flowing in and time is coming out. Now, another basic concept that I'm promoting is shown here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on that for you while I divert your attention momentarily from the camera work. Oh yes, the camera is almost ready to show you again what's going on here. So this is just a sketch from my notebook in terms of the 8-dimensional space around a proton and electron. So I'm going to just point out the proton here in the middle. So in the center here, this is circles the proton, and then the electron is over here on the right more. And you see there's just 2 dimensions. So instead of tornadoes and cones, I'm showing the dimensions of frustums. And the proton is connected to the electron through 2 dimensions of space. But for gravity, the proton has 3 dimensions of space flowing into it. And time is coming out. And really, time is a figment of your gravitation. It's nothing more than part of gravity. So I'm going to go back to the purpose, an application of how we can have replenishment of gravity into Planck's constant angular momentum. So the idea is that the lasers use fiber optics, and they amplify it using erbium in a fiber optic laser amplifier. Now, these lasers operate at an infrared laser photon energy of 0.8 electron volts. And one important thing about a laser is the population inversion, where some states can hold higher energy electrons for a long time, but say lower energy states are occupied for shorter times. So it's possible to build up a surplus of the population inversion. And now, in order to figure out the lifetime, I'm using this formula here, that the power of the is the Z, the atomic number, times h bar over tau squared. So this is a number of watts, let's say, in the power. And Z is the number of protons in erbium. And here's some links I'm going to give to you at this point. And so you could look at the pyramidal cube or impure math in the Blogspot or WordPress. But also in Thingiverse, you could look up the 3D nuclear structures. Using Blender 3D, you could then start your own hydrodynamic simulations of nuclei. And also you could go to a link for the Journal of Nuclear Physics. I wrote a paper in March of 2019, and you can read that at your leisure. So my name's Alan Folmsby. I have an MSEE degree, and I'm acting as a theoretical physicist for this decade. Now I'm going to go back again to a different picture here, so stand by. Now, I've shown this picture before. This is summarizing the ab initio bottom floor of the foundation. Here's the basement. The proton, that blue thing in the middle. In the very center of that proton is the lowest place in the universe. It's called negative infinity. And I claim it has a mirror in there. The 3 black tornadoes draining into the proton are the 3D space. That's the entire universe in blackness. Positive infinity is that black thing up in the sky. Now, only one electron is shown in this picture with one proton and one neutron. On the left you see the black electron, and it's connected with 2 dimensions in red to the proton. And going the other way is a yellow dimension. That causes spin. For example, the red line on top is going to the left and the yellow is going to the right. So it's a counterclockwise spin. Now on the bottom red line, you see that's going to the left, but the yellow is going to the right. So that's a clockwise spin. So that for that one electron-proton pair, you could observe either of 2 spins, up or down. Now, time, you see, is growing outwards from the proton. That's causing the acceleration of gravity. Space is draining in at a constant velocity of cubic meters per second. Space is the white, growing outwards at the speed called c. Now, this is really the same picture as what I showed you here. This picture is the frustums. So this proton-electron pair there, connected by frustums, partial cones, or little, showing the dimensions, going into the electron from the proton, but into the proton from the sky. So that it's a lot like the other picture where the blue proton has the sky in black above it. Now the electron could have an observer on it looking up at the sky from there, and all the observer would see would be the proton as a 2-dimensional ribbon. It's kind of like a flatland situation, but standing on the electron point instead of standing on a flat plane. So instead of Mr. Abbott having a flatland with a character in a plane, here the flatland is standing on a point of the electron, and yet 2 dimensions are going up to the proton, and that's where the sky is. It's no longer a big black area. It's a big white ribbon, so that only 2 dimensions are connecting it. And that connection between electron and proton is one of the ab initio concepts that I am proposing for future science. That even in the center of a star or a supernova, each proton is paired with only 1 electron at a time. That's what causes the shape of the nucleus to have protons forming lines of protons. I'm going to show that to you coming up in a second. Okay, like I was saying, protons form lines of protons during fusion, even in a star, because these protons are deterministically connected to 1 electron. And since they can only move in 2 dimensions, that leaves 1 dimension free for these protons to line up with. The white ones are protons and the brown are neutrons for iron. And this is part of the proof showing that fusion is strongly influenced by electrons. That the exclusion principle, the Pauli exclusion principle, is more generalized than just electron states. There's a generalized class of exclusion phenomena that Pauli has inspired. And these principles are involving the fusion effort. So in the future, when there's some kind of a generator in which energy is being produced by a new science, it'll be electrons always paired with protons. There is such a thing called free electrons, but that's just a human level concept of free. They're still paired. There's an equal number of protons and electrons in the universe. And going back to the universe again, so this black thing is the sky at positive infinity, and the proton has 4 dimensions for the gravity continuum and 4 dimensions for the electromagnetic continuum. And this is part of the ab initio foundation of future science. Time, x, y, and z are in the gravity continuum, while the electromagnetic continuum has magnet time, electric x, electric y, and electric z. That one goes to the neutron. So that last dimension goes from the proton to the neutron, and that's what feeds the neutron to keep it alive. And if it ever becomes separated from the proton, it only has like a 12-minute half-life. And this is just supporting the overall concept. So that's about all I have for today. I'm going to go back to the links, in case you wanted to see more. And I'll be back again on Friday at 20 hours GMT. Thank you.